Hey, what's going on? It's Stokely from Sauce on Delay. I was just... the Diary of the CEO, he had an episode about 2 hours long. His episodes are pretty long. I guess all the time. But he had an episode with a doctor named Dr. William Lee. And Dr. William Lee was talking about reversing stage 4 cancer using food. And he talked about some of the harmful things, and he talks about some of the good things. And some of the things that he thought was good were coffee, raspberry, blueberry, strawberry, I forgot what he said, beetroot, I think it's like purple potatoes, and some other stuff. He didn't get into spices though. He didn't mention spices. He did mention garlic. I'm sorry. He did mention garlic, right? He didn't mention stuff like cinnamon or whatever. But he has a whole bunch of... He has a book that he's working on. He has his own YouTube channel. You can go check it out. He probably has a whole bunch of stuff published. His name is Dr. William Lee, spelled L-I. And, I'm looking at, Diary of the CEO. He's a pretty conventional, a big name now. And he provides a lot of useful information. Just about every one of his shows, you feel like you are gaining value. And I think that's something that they teach you. Like when you read about how to do a good podcast, they say people have to feel like you're giving them value. And I feel like Diary of a CEO, I forgot what his real name is actually giving value in a lot of the shows. But I usually take a while to listen to his shows because they're like 2 hours long, and I gotta find a time when I got 2 hour stretch just to listen to his stuff, because I don't like to listen and stop it and go back. So while I'm zoned in on something at work, I just listen to his content. He has some great content. So, but what I really wanted to pop in and talk about is a guy who I learned a lot from. Kind of didn't even really learn anything, but I heard all the things that these guys are saying now, whether it's Dr. Axe or Dr. Berg, or it's the guests on Diary of a CEO, or any one of David Asprey, and all of these guys that are talking right now. Before they were talking about all of that, a guy named Gary Null did a lot of this research and was doing a lot of this work, putting his own money behind it. There's a lot of people. You could talk about Dr. Sebi too. Dr. Sebi was doing his thing. But the one that I know that was doing it in a big way, he even had like retreats and, he's doing it in a big way. You know what I mean? It's Gary Null. His name is Gary, N-U-L-L. He's from West Virginia originally. And, he not just talks about health. He talks about everything, but his focus is on health. I hope he's still alive. I haven't heard a lot from him recently, but he's, because of his, I guess, political opinions, sometimes he gets himself into a place where you can't really give him any highlight. But I want to give him his flowers, because I used to listen to his content all the way back in my college days, back in the early 2000s. I used to listen to his stuff. And, it's not the most entertaining content. And I don't agree with everything that he says. But he's been talking about quercetin, which is inside of cumin and stuff like that, and anti-cancer stuff and anti-inflammatory. He's been talking about that stuff for over 20 years. And he's not the only person, but he's the one that I know from my personal experience, to really do it in a big way. But there were a lot of contemporaries that he bounced off information from, that he got information from. A lot of these guys are using even conventional research data, because this guy, even Dr. William Lee, he's a conventional medicine researcher. He's a real doctor. Dr. Berg is a real doctor. The one called the Motivational Doc is a real doctor. That Australian lady that's always on Instagram and Twitter, she's a real doctor. There's a few doctors that are popping up that are giving alternative, low-cost, diet-based, plant-based, really just over-the-counter, accessible cures, treatments, and giving out strategies on how to tailor your lifestyle to a more healthy lifestyle, like away from the processed foods, away from the added sugars, away from the radiation, away from the cosmetics and the hormone disruptors and the detergents and so on and so on and so forth. And it's great that all of that is getting a big push nowadays, because people are, I think it's, I'm gonna be egocentric and say, the Gen X is really driving it, because Gen X, right? Gen X is the one growing up playing Sonic for the first time. Gen X is the one growing up playing Mario Brothers for the first time. Gen X is the one watching all the Marvel movies came out. And now they're bringing back Sonic. They're bringing back Mario in a big way. They're bringing back all of those cartoons that we watched during the 80s and the 90s right now, and they're rehashing them to everyone else, to the next generation. It's not saying that Gen X, is the first in everything, but we're the first ones to go from dial-up internet, the first internet, to where it is right now. You know what I mean? So we're also getting old. We're also becoming people of a certain age, and we're amassing information, and we're realizing that we want to be healthy. We want to live. So I think, I guess I'm being egocentric, but I think Gen X is a big push behind that, because even the videos that I see, even people reach out. Well, people are marketing their fitness coaching in my DMs, saying, oh, you're a dad and you want to get rid of that dad bod and da 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 blah 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 blah. You want to boost your testosterone, da 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 da. Maybe it's because I'm looking up that stuff, but that's the Gen X guys right now. The guys that are past Gen X stage, like the baby boomers guys that are in like in their 60s and up, they're not really looking into that so much. Their numbers aren't, significant enough, I would say. But the Gen X guys, they're looking into it. The Gen X guys are looking into hair replacement. The Gen X guys are looking into testosterone replacement. The Gen X guys are looking into human growth hormone. The Gen X guys are looking into getting fit. The Gen X guys are looking into maximizing their health span. Like even David, what's his name? Brian, oh my gosh, what's his name? I can't remember his name here. The guy that's trying to live to forever, right? Brian, I can't remember his name right now. I did a whole episode on him. Brian, whatever his name is. So even the guy named Brian, he's only like, I don't know, 6 years or so older than I am. We're in the same age group, basically. Except he's a multi-millionaire. So he's, he's trying to extend his life. He's trying to live forever. Peter Thiel is trying to live forever. I think Peter Thiel is probably a little older. He's probably about in his close to 60. Why can't I remember Brian? What's his name's name? He has Brian Johnson. Yeah, Brian Johnson, right? And you know what the funny thing is? Brian Johnson, the life extension guy, got the same name as Brian Johnson, Liver King. Anyhow, but all I want to say is big ups to Gary Null, right? I bought one of his DVDs when a guy in my office, his wife was suffering from cancer, and I bought one of Gary Null's DVDs and gave it to him. Well, I made a copy of it and then gave it to him. I'm sorry, Gary, but I think Gary's cool with that. But I didn't even watch the DVD myself. The quality was poor. Gary's always talking about his documentaries and his filming and all that, but I was surprisingly the DVD quality wasn't all that great. But I mean, he can't do everything amazing, you know what I'm saying? He's doing his research, he's doing the best he can, you know, he's doing a lot, he's doing the best he can. I hope he's still alive. I don't know, I haven't heard about him in a while. But you know, you got guys like Dr. Sebi, but Gary Null kind of, all of them have to financially back their work, you know, so they do sell their services. They do have like a paywall-ish information dissemination situation going on, but you know, you can't give from an empty vessel. So they for the work that they're doing, they need to be not compensated necessarily, but they need to be provided with the means to continue doing what they're doing. And I can't remember. I remember as early as, you know, like I said, Gary Null is not the first. When I was growing up, when I was little, when I was, I don't know, maybe when I just started reading. When I started reading, probably started reading when I was about, I don't know, 6 years old, 5 years old, maybe five. I knew some words, but I definitely know that I was reading independently and doing my homework by about 6 years old and trying to memorize passages for class and stuff like that by 6 years old. So I was probably reading by about 5 years old. And my parents had a chest full of books, and one of the books they had was Back to Eden. I eventually bought that book again, maybe I don't know, 2 years ago. I bought a copy for my own house, Back to Eden. And my mother bought another book for herself years later, but we had that book since the 80s. My parents probably had the book since the 70s, right? And that book, Back to Eden, is about herbs and plants and all kind of ways to heal yourself naturally. So, you know, it's nothing new. I mean, if you go back to even to the industrial era or whatever, but I mean, people have been trying to heal themselves naturally since forever, right? And then, you know, if you're going around these circles of natural healing, then you start hearing some stuff that sounds like conspiracy, where it says, oh, David Rockefeller wanted to take over the educational system and wanted to take over the medical system and switch everything over to where it's a whole bunch of drugs that are made out of petroleum and all kind of stuff like that. Now, I'm not going to refute or support that because I don't like to get involved in politics. So, you know, I'm going to leave that right there. So, but I just want to big up Gary Null. I want to big up whoever wrote the book Back to Eden. I don't know who wrote that. I want to big up all the people who, you know, tried to help us all, you know, get and stay healthy and live long, pain-free, hopefully, and so on and so on and so forth. And I was just inspired because I was listening to this guy, Dr. William Lee, on Diary of a CEO's podcast. And I'm like, you know what? These guys, they're just converging and coming back around to what has been going on and rejected for probably the past 50 years. 1970 is 50 years ago. 1970 is 50 years ago. That Back to Eden book probably came out in the 70s or the 60s or so. Right? If it came out in the 70s, it's 50 years ago. If it came out in the 80s, then it's 40 years ago. You know, 40 something years ago. So call it 50 years. This has been going on. But the so-called conventional medicine, you know, it has been good. And beneficial and useful. But at the same time, it hasn't integrated those spices. And this guy, Dr. William Lee, says, listen, some of these drugs that we were developing to fight cancer don't perform as well as food. Some of these foods are performing better than chemotherapy, which chemotherapy poisons you at the same time while it's trying to quote unquote heal you. While these foods, they don't have any side effects, you know. So he's bringing it right back around, and what we're realizing overall is that we got to get back to nature. People are hiking, seeing the boost to their, what he said, oxytocin. He said the food, some of these foods and the bacteria that we encounter can boost your oxytocin. I was just reading that exercise can boost dopamine. So do we need these dopamine agonist medications to reduce our pituitary inflammation? Do we need these, you know, medical treatments to do stuff? You know what I mean? Maybe we don't. Maybe we have natural things, or we can just do exercises in order to, you know, raise our vibration to a healing vibration to heal ourselves. Is this person gonna let me change lanes? No, they're not. Okay. You know, and it's something I want to touch on also. You know, I was playing basketball with a little kid from the neighborhood, and he told me that he went to the park and some kids tried to rob him, and he got into a confrontation with them, and he had to pull out his knife. And he's only 13 years old, little kid, like basically barely 4 feet tall. He said 5 guys tried to jump him and take his little motorcycle that he had. And I was very disheartened because, you know, I mean, I'm so many years removed from those kind of interactions in the old neighborhood that I used to live in. I'm so far removed from it that I wasn't thinking that these things were still going on. And, you know, that's an indicator of, you know, how when you go older you get disconnected from reality, because your reality is always evolving and always changing. You're always, you know, it's very disappointing to me. And I feel like, you know, we have to talk about all things. We have to discuss all things. So, you know, even politics should be not something that's totally eliminated from our dialogue just for whatever purposes, but just for economic expediency in my case. Because it's all related. We're all sharing this world, you know. But a recurrent thought now, though, is that this rap music and is creating destruction. It's just pushing just bad ideas, and it's training these little kids to be little monsters and grow up to be adult monsters that can't even sustain themselves. It's telling them to use drugs. It's telling them to take alcohol. It's not telling them to be healthy. It's not telling them to be educated. It's not telling them to be skilled. It's not telling them to prepare for old age. It's not telling them to secure their retirement. It's not telling them to do anything constructive. It's just chewing them up and making a profit from dysfunction. And it's very tragic that the little boy told me that. And he himself is influenced by it because he was there. I saw him, and he was shouting to his mother. Him and his mother were having some kind of disagreement about his shoes or whatever. And he was calling his mother bro, and he was shouting. I said, listen, you don't call your mother bro. And be a good boy, man. And then I heard about the experience that he had at the park, and I'm like, you know what? It's kind of hard for him to exist, especially even as an only child, trying to navigate the world and being assailed, you know, being pounced upon by his contemporaries, being pounced upon by people that are supposed to be quote unquote his people, right? Yeah. It's a learning experience. Life is a learning experience. I'm still learning. And I gotta relearn things. I gotta relearn that it's not cute out here. It's not pretty out here. It's not peaceful out here necessarily. You know, you have to fight in every single area that you know, first you gotta fight with yourself. You gotta fight with bacteria. You gotta fight with laziness. You gotta fight with your own internal depression. You gotta fight with all kinds of stuff. You gotta fight with the people that you know. You gotta fight with the people that you love. You fight with the people that you don't know. You gotta fight with your co-workers. I mean, but you know, at the same time, I think it's Shinsu. I don't know how to say his name right, but I think it's Shinsu or Lao Tzu that says a great fighter is never angry. So it's not something that you should be angry about, disappointed about, or sad about. It's just part of existence. You know, I'm thinking about a deer or a wildebeest or whatever. You know, I was watching David Goggins and he was running and he was saying, you know what? One time he realized that he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do because he was being down on himself. He was being all depressed or whatever, and he had to change that. And I'm thinking about a gazelle or a deer or a water buffalo or a wildebeest in the jungle. When a lion is chasing them or a cheetah is chasing them, they don't say, oh, well, you know, I'm so sad. I'm just going to let this lion eat me. I'm just going to let this cheetah eat me. I'm just going to let this leopard eat me. I don't think they do that. I don't think they do that. I think they know it's part of the game, and they fight the best they can. They do the best that they can. So we got to do the best that we can, I guess, you know. Anyhow, man, but all in all, big ups to Gary Null for putting me on. Big ups to my parents, really, for kind of putting me on. I wasn't paying attention that time. I wasn't paying attention at 6 years old, 5 years old. I was not paying attention. I didn't know what that book was about. All I knew about the book was it has a nice, pretty picture on the front of it. At 5 years old, I knew the book had a pretty picture on the front of it, and that's all I knew about it. But Back to Eden, you know, you can go check it out. Yeah, you can check that out. Thanks for listening.